Hey everybody, happy Monday. I'm Alistair Stevens. Welcome to This Week in Point North. It's kind of a dreary and gray Monday morning here in Oklahoma City. I have been hard at work already. So hard at work, in fact, that my mischief managed cup has already half faded. This is an intolerable situation which clearly cannot continue, though if I'd had any more coffee this morning, you may not be able to hear the actual words that I say here. We're going to talk a little in the next 20 minutes or so about what is to come this week from Point North Media, and we're going to begin with a very exciting announcement. Maybe you missed the patron-exclusive live Q&A on Friday, but we have a new patron-exclusive book club text, and we're starting the discussion this coming Friday, which leaves no time at all to dilly-dally. No further ado will be tolerated because you need to run out and pick up your copy of Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time. I've done some scheduling for the Point North patron exclusive book club. I've done some scheduling in general. In fact, the schedule for the rest of January is fixed over on the Google Calendar that we use to line these things up. We're going to spend 4 weeks looking at A Wrinkle in Time, which is a lot. I was initially thinking about a 3-week discussion period, but the truth is that there is just so much depth, there is just so much complexity, and there's so much space within A Wrinkle in Time for not outright speculation, not a kind of speculation that ever becomes unanchored or disassociated from the core text, but a kind of speculation that fills in the vast and cathedral-like spaces framed by that text. So we're going to take 4 weeks to do A Wrinkle in Time, and then we're going to look at the new movie adaptation. That'll give us all a couple of weeks to see that new movie adaptation. And then, in case, again, you missed the discussion on Friday in the patron-exclusive Q&A, we're going to launch straight into our next book club topic, which is going to be Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, and hopefully at some point take a look at the TV adaptation of that, though there isn't a reliable release date for that TV adaptation that is coming out sometime this year, so I'm told, but I have no more information than that. So A Wrinkle in Time first, Good Omens second. If you want access to those discussions, then all you have to do is support Point North Media, either via Patreon or via Coffee or via PayPal or a check in the mail or however you want to do it. I have just framed out a new way of allowing all the patrons of Point North access to all of the exclusive content. What used to be Patreon exclusive is now patron exclusive. So however you choose to support Point North, you'll be able to get access to those discussions. And of course, your support enables this entire operation. You make it possible for me to do this work at all, to produce any podcasts. And the book club is just a little extra something. In addition to the book club, though, I'm now doing a weekly newsletter. I've just set that up this morning too. Some of you who support via Patreon in particular may have got notification emails that you have been signed up for something new and exciting. If you haven't received that email, don't worry. I don't think it sent out all of the notification emails yet. There'll be a confirmation later this week. But once a week, I'm going to write a newsletter. I'm going to write a little email something. It might be a piece of fiction. It might be my thoughts on a particular pop culture related issue of the day, something related to the publishing industry or the movie industry or the video game industry, or it may be a deep dive into a particular element of narrative craft or narrative theory. I'm really looking forward to that. I want to write more in 2018, and this seems like a perfect excuse to do so. That, I think, is everything for the patrons. You guys, thank you so much for making it possible for me to do this work. Let's look at our general schedule for this week. This evening, those of you who are enrolled in the Between Worlds class will be able to settle down with me at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central for the second session in our Between Worlds class, where we look at the foundations of fairy and folklore in the medieval period. In Middle English specifically, we're going to be looking at Sir Orfeo, and we're going to be looking at Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, two, in some senses, fundamentally opposed fairy stories, right? I think that it's absolutely fair to say that the fairy tale tradition bifurcates in the medieval period, and we get stories like Sir Orfeo, this kind of Middle English fairy tale retelling of the Odyssey, and we get stories like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight about the intrusion of fairy into the mundane realm. So we're going to look at both sides of this, and of course, just celebrate some of this fantastic literature and look at the way that medievalists established what we expect fairy tales to be. All of that is happening tonight for those people who have signed up for the Between Worlds class. If you haven't signed up for the Between Worlds class, don't worry, there'll be an opportunity after the class is done, 5 weeks from now, I guess, to buy a downloadable packet version of that you can just enjoy on your own time. That's going to be a ton of fun. It's a really fun class already, and we're only just getting into the meat of it this week, so I'm very excited about all of that. Then tomorrow evening, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, we have the next episode of Dear Mr. Potter, which I've entitled The Dark Mark, because we're finally going to get to the Quidditch World Cup, and the most important, intrusive, significant assault upon the wizarding world that arguably there has ever been within the fiction of Harry Potter. I'm going to argue this a little more fully tomorrow night, but I think that the appearance of the Dark Mark over the Quidditch World Cup is incredibly significant, is incredibly profound, and speaks directly to the kind of thematic framework that J.K. Rowling is establishing here in Goblet of Fire. I have been falling more and more in love with Goblet of Fire as I've been reading it, and I know that that's going to wane. I know I'm going to hit, the back half of the second act of this book, somewhere between that kind of, 55% of the way through the book to like maybe 70% of the way through the book, I'm going to lose a lot of interest because it just slows right down, though I'm sure there'll still be fun conversations to be had. But the opening to Goblet of Fire is just knocking off my socks every time I return to that book. So I'm absolutely thrilled to talk about that tomorrow night. That is Dear Mr. Potter at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. Then on Thursday evening, the next episode 48, I believe, Rabbits and Oliphants of There and Back Again, in which we get two incredibly significant things. I mean, we get a lot of Frodo and Sam and Smeagol, of course, but we also get Sam's brilliant Oliphant poem, which we'll be looking at in some depth. And we get the introduction of my favorite character in The Lord of the Rings. You guys, he's finally shown up, but he isn't quite himself yet. Faramir. Faramir shows up in this week's reading, though we're really going to deal with Faramir in next week's reading, which I'm very, very excited for. So that's There and Back Again at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central on Thursday evening. And then that aforementioned A Wrinkle in Time book club, in which we're going to discuss the first 3 chapters of A Wrinkle in Time, which is not much, right? A Wrinkle in Time is a short novel anyway, and we're going to take our time moving through it. So we're going to look at the first 3 chapters on Friday evening, also 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. It's a 10 p.m. Eastern kind of week, I suppose, is what I'm saying, except for the Between Worlds class, which is at 9 p.m. Eastern, to make it a slightly more accommodating for our friends in Europe, for our friends in #inconvenient time zones. Speaking of our friends in inconvenient time zones, thank you to everyone who has shown up over at the Point North Forum, the brand new Point North Forum. I discussed this, I think, on all the shows that I did last week, but it's really taking form now. I spent some time over the weekend kicking the tires and adding in some new functionality and linking to it from the Point North website and a bunch of other stuff, just some technical back-end stuff. And now it's there and it's rolling along. And I just added this morning the ability to post GIFs. So now you can head on over there and post all of your favorite, #FlirtO'clock GIFs over on the Point North Media Forum. That's pointnorthmedia.com/forum, or go to pointnorthmedia.com and click the forum button in the top right, and you can sign up there. If there are any issues, by the way, if you are a patron of Point North, you should have access to a couple of patron-exclusive forums on boards, I suppose, on the forum. If you can't see those, get in touch and let me know. I just need to add you to that list. Similarly, if you are a student of the Between Worlds class and you can't see the Between Worlds class discussion space over on the forum, let me know. I can add you to that list too. It's just, you're going to set up these different roles. It's an administrative nightmare just setting up a new forum, but it's coming along. It's all working out. Now I can draw breath and look here at one more thing before I actually draw breath and look at the chat here. I've had a lot of requests over the course of the last few weeks to release an audio version of these this week on Point North sessions. I don't think I'm going to start a podcast feed just for these sessions, because that seems like a kind of reductive thing to do. But what I do want to do is do a kind of general Point North behind the scenes podcast feed that'll just be available in iTunes. I don't know what I'll call it, but I'll call it something. And all of the This Week on Point North podcasts will go out there, in addition to any other kind of general announcement discussions that we have, or, bits and pieces, I suppose. Anything else that I do will also go in that feed. We'll just do a general behind the scenes podcast feed from Point North Media, which will encourage me, and not just encourage me, but create a space so that I can have some extra discussions and just be a little less formal and rigid about the kind of content that I deliver to you guys. I've loved doing these This Week on Point North sessions and the patron-exclusive book club / Q&A sessions on a Friday. I really love the way that those bracket the week and allow me to just talk a little more about the work that I do, to talk in a more kind of in a more self-referential and a more intertextual kind of way about, the doing of the work that we share together and that we discuss over the course of the week. So all of that has been a really fascinating process, and this gives me another space to kind of open that up. So all of that is to say that if you want the audio versions of these This Week on Point North sessions, stay tuned. It's going to take me a few days to get that set up, to get the podcast approved by Apple and so on and so forth. We're still going to jump through all these hoops even in 2018, but that will be available at some point in the near future. Okay. Let me check up with the with the chat here. Angela saying I'm a part of both groups. I will check if I need to be added to the list. Excellent, excellent. Yes, good. And yeah, of course, when I say that I'll submit the podcast to Apple, what I mean is Apple and Google Play and possibly Stitcher. I need to check in with Stitcher, see if they're being shady or being cool. I'm not sure where they are right now on that shady to cool spectrum. I also, there'll be just a general RSS feed available, so you can just pipe that thing into your podcast app of choice. Yes, jumping hoops, says Angela. Yes, we must leap through these hoops with balletic grace as we do. Let me see here. A lot of love for A Wrinkle in Time. This is great. Good. I'm so glad. Yeah, A Wrinkle in Time is just an extraordinary book. As I said, both A Wrinkle in Time and Good Omens are definitely in my top 20 books of all time, and depending on the day, may well push into my top 10. So right now, because I haven't read it in a couple of years, I think A Wrinkle in Time is definitely pressing toward the top of the top 10. So I'm very eager to sink into that book again and to share those discussions with you. A very rich and dense, though yet still relentlessly accessible, right? It is beautifully open. I keep thinking of these, in a synesthetic kind of way. I keep thinking of these like open, grand, cathedral-like spaces established by A Wrinkle in Time that it will assert, never with a great specificity, but with great intentionality. It will gesture and a space will emerge. And when I say it, I'm referring to the book itself, the narrative voice of the book itself. It will gesture and a space will emerge, and we will be invited to explore that space, but absolutely not forced or compelled to explore that space. It is a book that, more so than most books that I can think of, and arguably more so than any other book that I can think of right now, it is a book that invites us in, that lures us. It is a book which demonstrates more powerfully and evocatively that notion of the investment of belief than any other book I can think of. It's an extraordinary piece of work. I cannot wait to talk about it. And then, of course, Good Omens, right? We're going to have the chance to talk about a unique collaboration between Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. It's going to be wonderful to take a look at that book and to, particularly on the heels of the other, patron exclusive book club title that we did when we looked at Douglas Adams' brilliant Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Good Omens is in so many ways an evolution, not just of that particular text, that specific text, but an evolution of that entire tradition in British satirical comedy writing. That is a tradition that goes back to the 40s and the 50s, goes back to the Goonies, comes up through Monty Python, comes up through Douglas Adams, comes up through, the entire output, that kind of rebellious, anarchic, punky output of the BBC comedy department in the late 1970s through the 1980s, things like The Young Ones and things like Alexi Sale, that tradition is so strong and so vibrant. And then it smashes into Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman and is transformed, is elevated so beautifully, because what Terry Pratchett manages to do, and I'm kind of crediting Terry with this rather than crediting the two of them together. It's going to be an interesting point of speculation as we move through that book. In fact, who is responsible for what? But I see in the pages of Good Omens exactly what Terry Pratchett did throughout his Discworld series, which is to take these grand ideas and to follow them through with that beautifully British satirical eye to their logical, absurd conclusions, but then to draw it back and to find within that very absurdity not a relentless nihilism like Douglas Adams found, or an appeal to a magical realist sensibility or a magical realist metaphor, the way that Neil Gaiman so often does, but to draw it back to just heart, to draw it back to humanity, to draw it back to vulnerability. That is what Terry Pratchett did more beautifully than any other writer. And I can't wait to talk about it. I really can't wait to talk about it. So A Wrinkle in Time and then Good Omens. As you can tell, I'm pretty excited. We're also going to continue with Dear Mr. Potter. We're also going to continue with There and Back Again. Oh, and because I think that Aaron, that Sosa Sundare has already mentioned it. Carla is saying, and then onto Discworld, can I hope? Well, here's the thing. I sent out this morning, if you support Point North Media on Patreon, I'm going to have to figure out how these tiers work exactly moving forward, because, as we move away from Patreon as a de facto source of support for Point North, as I kind of open and democratize these means of you guys offering your support, for which I am extraordinarily grateful, as I try to remember to say every single time, because good Lord, it's true. As I move away from Patreon, I want to kind of open up the means of access to what I think is the most important Patreon reward that we have right now. If you support Point North Media at the $20 a month level, then you get to pick a one-shot. And I sent out emails this morning saying, hey, you guys, it's 2018. Let's all pick our one-shots. Pick a topic that you want me to discuss, and I'm going to discuss it. I've had 2 people come back to me with more Pratchett already. So we're definitely going to be looking at more Pratchett as we move forward through the year. We're getting perilously close, you guys, to me just starting a Terry Pratchett book club podcast where we just look at all of his work in order. I think that there is absolutely enough there. I think that it is absolutely sophisticated enough. It is absolutely deep enough. It is absolutely brilliant enough. I would like nothing more than to delve into that. So one way or another, we're definitely going to be talking about more Pratchett this coming year. We're also going to be talking about some other things. I've had a request again for The Princess Bride, which is not going to be a one-shot, or is going to be a multi-part one-shot, or is just going to be a much longer one-shot, because I want to talk about The Princess Bride. I want to talk about the book. I want to talk about the movie. I love both of those things very much. Stories about stories are always, you know, a way of getting access to my heart, always a way of slipping through my cynical and jaded defenses. Stories about stories always engage me. Stories about the telling of stories, chef kiss. That's what I love. That's what I love more than anything else. And both versions of The Princess Bride, though they are so very different, are stories about the telling of stories. But all of that is to say that Soso Sundare, Aaron, here in the chat, has requested the very first one-shot of 2018, which is, I think, going to take place on the 31st of January. Is that the Wednesday? Let me double check here. Yes, the 31st of January is going to be our first one-shot of 2018, and it is going to be the brilliant Studio Ghibli movie, My Neighbor Totoro. So we're going to be delving into a very utterly beguiling and thoughtful and meditative perspective on fairy stories and fairy tales from this uniquely Japanese, this uniquely Asian perspective. I'm so excited to talk. Of course, it is unnecessary for me to say that I love My Neighbor Totoro because I am a thinking, feeling, moving human being in the world. But I do love My Neighbor Totoro, you guys. So we're going to talk about that. And probably, I think, do a quick gloss of the other Studio Ghibli movies as well in the context of that discussion. So that is going to be on January the 31st. Not this week on Point North, but upcoming on Point North. All right. Is that where we are? This, I think, oh, yes. Jin is saying, oh, this is Just to Say by William Carlos Williams. Jin is suggesting that as a one-shot. Talk to me about plums, Alistair. I could talk. No, Jen and I were just talking about William Carlos Williams. This is Just to Say, and talking about the perspective that was offered in the podcast Wonderful by Griffin and Rachel McElroy, in which Rachel McElroy said that the thing that makes This Is Just to Say by William Carlos Williams a poem versus just a note or a statement, the thing that elevates it in its artistic content, the thing that connects the reader to it is, as I've said before, you know, the evocation of a certain emotional response. What is the emotional response that William Carlos Williams is seeking to evoke in the poem This Is Just to Say? Well, as Rachel McElroy said on the Wonderful podcast, it made her horny for plums. It's as good a purpose as any other. It's as good a literary poetic purpose as any other. I'm super into it. Hey, there's this week's podcast recommendation for you. Wonderful, with Griffin McElroy and Rachel McElroy. It's utterly, utterly adorable. I strongly suggest that you check it out. It replaced their old show Rose Buddies, so there's still a little confusion in the branding, which you guys can fix that. Like, I know it's tough, but you guys can fix that. But yes. Okay. Let me see here. That, I think, is going to do it. Oh, Carla's leaving us. Yeah, well, this is it then. We're here. Oh, Angela's just finished Mabel season 4, and it was fantastic. I am still catching up. I am still trying to catch up with all of that. Yes, good. Mabel is fantastic, though, as I recommended before. Oh, Alexis says, I adore Wonderful with all of my small heart. Alexis, you are not possessed of a small heart. You are possessed of an abundant heart, an abundant and inclusive heart that has revolutionized our discussions over on Twitter and via email and in all the many places that we correspond with you, Alexis. You are valued and adored. Yes, Wonderful is very, very good. Jin also says, I'm making Alistair saying it makes me horny for plums my ringtone. Fair. Good. Best life choices, Jin says back up. All right, before this gets completely out of hand, now that I've invited you all to post GIFs over on the forum, I dread to think what I'm going to see when I head back over there. Let me see. Alexis has a question here. Would you consider talking about When You Reach Me by Rebecca Stead as a companion or somehow in comparison to A Wrinkle in Time? It's a pretty quick read that has interesting comparison points and talks about the time travel Tesser part of the book in a way that I don't remember Wrinkle in Time itself talking about. When You Reach Me. Let me Google that because I feel as though I've read that. but I'm not 100% sure. Well, this looks terribly familiar. I have no plans right now, Alexis, to talk about this, but that is not to say that I won't. Oh, right. Right. No, I haven't read it. I got into a discussion about it. I think that's what I'm remembering. Yes. 2010. Yeah, no, I don't think that I did read this. I think that I got into a discussion. Oh, gosh, I don't even remember where the discussion was. All of that is to say, no, I haven't read it. I don't have plans to discuss it. That doesn't mean that we won't. But hey, you know where a perfect place to discuss that would be? Over on the Point North Forum. Come on over and suggest it. I'm sure there are other people in that community, in this sprawling and diasporic, wonderful community of awesome that have read this book and can talk to you about it. And if you recommend it, I will certainly consider checking it out as soon as I have time. Yes. Good. All right. That, I think, is going to do it. It's been a pleasure talking with you all. I look forward to talking with you more in the course of this week. We have, to recap, the Between Worlds class, the second session of the Between Worlds class on Sir Orfeo and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight posted tonight. If you received the original link, by the way, I sent out some class links last week that inexplicably only contained the first half of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Literally, I think the first 52 stanzas of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I have replaced that file. I have also uploaded a replacement file to the forum, so you can go and read the rest of that or gloss the rest of that. I'm going to give you an encapsulated version of that tonight. So, Between Worlds, Session 2, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central this evening. The links will be going out for that within the next hour or so, I would say. Then, tomorrow night, Dear Mr. Potter, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, the next 3 chapters taking us through the Quidditch World Cup and the emergence of the Dark Mark. Arguably, as I say, the greatest turning point faced not so much by Harry and Hermione and Ron, but by the wizarding world in general. This is an all-out assault. This is a really exciting and fascinating part of the book. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow night. Then on Thursday, the next 2 chapters, we're going to talk about stewed rabbits and we're going to talk about Oliphant's over and there and back again. And we're going to finally get to Faramir. I cannot wait. And then on Friday, we begin our discussion of A Wrinkle in Time in the patron-exclusive book club. If you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, if you have any comments, you can email me directly, pointnorthmedia@gmail.com, or you can head on over to the shiny new Point North Forum, pointnorthmedia.com/forum. Sign up there and you can send me a message. You can DM me there. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me in all the usual places where you know how to find me. I will talk to you all again later in the week. I will hopefully see many of you for the patron-exclusive book club at the end of this week. I'm so looking forward to talking about A Wrinkle in Time. And with that, I think my Mischief Managed cup, my Marauders Map cup, has all but faded to black, which means that I need to go and get some more coffee. You guys, I will talk to you all again soon. Until then, take care.